What's the problem with the flight paths from the new north runway at Dublin Airport? Approximately 300 aircraft each day depart Dublin Airport's north runway. Instead of climbing straight ahead over the empty fields and solar farms within the airport's noise boundary, each one makes a sharp turn at the end of the runway. As a result, these flights cross the noise boundary almost immediately and fly at low altitude using climb power over schools and homes, showering 30,000 people with noise, in some cases upwards of 90 decibels. Flight paths used by commercial aircraft are defined in documents called Instrument Flight Procedures. Takeoff procedures are known as Standard Instrument Departures, or SIDs, landing procedures as Standard Arrivals, or STARS. Pilots are required to stick to these procedures, and they are normally flown by the aircraft's autopilot. The originally planned route for this runway was to fly straight ahead, wings level for 5 nautical miles, approximately 9 kilometres. At that point, having climbed to a minimum of 3,000 feet, they would make turns towards their destination. Most will have reached higher than 3,000 feet by that point, further reducing the noise disturbance on the ground. DAA used this flight path in creating the 2005 Environmental Impact Statement that was fundamental to the grant of planning permission in 2007 by Onboard Planola. As of February 2024, the 4th set of routes for the North Runway is in use. These were developed by DAA and their subcontractor AirNav. The SID requires all aircraft to turn right at 650 feet above sea level, which is only about 400 feet above the ground. In theory, the turn required is 30 degrees, but as we shall see, it's frequently more than that, sometimes as much as 50 degrees. The flight paths now in operation and the environmental impact, particularly noise, have never been the subject of any public consultation. So why is there such a difference between the originally planned flight paths and those in use today? International standards apply to all aspects of aviation, especially commercial aviation. Many of the requirements are set down by ICAO, a UN body. These include the rules for safely operating parallel runways at an airport. Unfortunately, when IAA accepted the original route for EIS noise and pollution modelling, they were not experienced with parallel runways. The development of the new runway appears to have been treated as though it was a standalone runway at a new airport. The rules for runways that are only 1.7 kilometres apart, like in Dublin, are very different from those for a standalone runway, so the copy-paste of the South Runway's procedures was flawed from the very beginning. One of the parallel runway rules is that immediately after takeoff, there must be 30-degree course deviation between departing aircraft and the missed approach track for landing aircraft on the parallel runway. So what is a missed approach? The missed approach is just another track or flight path. When an aircraft is on approach to land on a runway, there are some circumstances where they can't complete the landing. This is called a go-round or a missed approach. The most common reason is poor visibility or very gusty winds, often during a landing approach through cloud, fog, rain, etc. The pilot must be able to see the runway clearly enough to land, and the approach must be stable. If not, they must go around and fly the published missed approach track. In Dublin, now with parallel runways, there must be a 30-degree deviation between departures from the north runway and the missed approach for the traffic landing on the south runway. Rather than follow the pattern of virtually all airports with parallel runways and deviate the south runway's missed approach, AirNav chose to deviate the departure track of the north runway with a 30-degree right turn. At no point have either DAA or AirNav claimed that they cannot deviate the south runway's missed approach, only that it is complex and regulated, and would require them to interact with multiple state bodies and Weston Airport. In short, it would take work. We used simulation in Google Earth to help illustrate the difference between the original permitted flight paths and those on the current SID. The first clip shows how all aircraft are supposed to depart according to the model flight path used in the Environmental Impact Statement created by DAA in 2005. You can see the aircraft departing straight ahead from the end of the runway, climbing out over largely unpopulated areas, certainly no large towns, and flying straight ahead, which is the most efficient way for aircraft to climb and gets them away from the ground as quickly as possible, minimizing disturbance from noise. Efficient climbing also brings an improvement in safety, especially when compared to requiring heavily laden aircraft to make turns at low altitude, beginning at 400 feet above ground level. To the right of the screen in the distance, you can see a label over Dunshaughlin. Keep that distance in mind for later. At this point, the aircraft is crossing the airport's outer noise boundary, having flown 13 kilometres and climbed well above 3,000 feet. The second clip is a visual representation of real-world data captured from one of the 300-plus aircraft that fly the route day and night every day. This aircraft was unable to make the turn before the end of the runway, as it had failed to climb to 400 feet above ground by that point. This results in a sharper turn to get back on the flight path, which further reduces the climb efficiency. At this point, the aircraft is already leaving the permitted noise zone, despite having flown only 3 kilometres, as opposed to the 13 kilometres we saw earlier on the legal track. The aircraft is at low altitude and climb power when flying over the roof of Kilcoskin National School. Here you can see the homes along the old N2 and feeder roads into it. This is typical of Irish rural development for decades. More than half of the departures veer right at this point, passing just to the east of Ashbourne. Most of the rest follow the track we're on, slightly to the south of Ashbourne, coming within a kilometre of the edge of town, showering it with noise as they head out towards Ratoath. Reaching Ratoath, they fly straight over the middle of the town. They then bear left and fly directly over Dunshaughlin. Remember, in the previous clip, Dunshaughlin was barely visible. The population of Ashbourne is 14,000 people, Ratoath 12,000 people, and Dunshaughlin 6,000 people. To get the noise pollution back into the zone that was originally defined for it means abandoning the 30-degree right turn from the north runway. To do this means changing the south runway's missed approach to turn left. Airspace reserved for Weston Airport and the restricted airspace for the military have been cited as making this difficult. However, there are multiple ways to modify the missed approach, various routes with turns of different angles made at different points that could meet the requirement. This simulation shows one example of such a route that we believe is feasible and should be urgently implemented as the simplest solution. This clip is our group's proposed missed approach for the south runway, flown in an Airbus simulator that showed the aircraft reaching 2,000 feet by the turning point near the end of the runway. This left turn satisfies the ICAO safety requirement for parallel runways with more than the 30-degree minimum. The aircraft completes its climb over the quarry and the industrial area of Ballycoolan and is at 4,000 feet before overflying the first residential area reached. At 4,000 feet it levels off, throttles back to 50%, making it much quieter than either departing or landing aircraft. The airspaces you can see to the right are Weston in purple and the military R-15 in blue. The aircraft is already 1,000 feet above the R-15's ceiling altitude, and it never actually overflies either Weston or military airspace. It then turns back east, flying level at low power, over the city, out to sea to set up once again for landing. It is following the reverse of the already approved runway 10 right missed approach track that operates when the wind blows from the east. It's important to remember that while 300 flights a day depart the north runway, climbing over the 30,000 people affected, missed approaches or go-rounds are very rare. A dual runway airport like Dublin should have around 300 missed approaches a year, most of which will occur during heavy storms, blustery winds and rain, which is the reason why the go-rounds occur. Departures occur all day, every day, in all weathers, including at times when people want to be outside in their garden or on their patio or simply sleeping with their windows open. Missed approaches do not tend to have anywhere near the same disturbing effect because nobody really wants to be outside during the storm that's bad enough to cause go-rounds. Members of our group have spent over 300 hours working on this project and are confident that our proposed solution can make a material improvement to the lives of the people affected. The proposal brings DAA into compliance with Condition 1 of their planning permission, with no reduction in capacity at the airport and an improvement in safety.